I always saw her before I spoke to her. That was the pattern. She'd be at the corner table of the coffee shop near the duplex, reading with the kind of concentration that made you feel rude just by glancing. Mid-mornings usually, a paperback resting against her thermos, steam curling like a curtain between her and everyone else. The first time I noticed her, it wasn't the book. It was the way she touched the rim of her mug after setting it down, as if checking the world was still solid. I don't know why I remembered that. It was one of those mornings when the shop was too bright, and I sat there half awake, scrolling through messages I never sent. Old friends I never replied to. My mother, who asked if I was eating. A draft of a text to a girl I didn't have the nerve to finish. And then the bell over the cafe door chimed. She came in, coat folded over her arm, hair pulled back but strands slipping out, catching the light. She ordered without looking at the menu, same thing as always. Large drip, black, extra hot, she said. She glanced my way when the barista asked about her day. Just a half second. But when her eyes brushed mine, I felt that same flicker you get when headlights sweep across your window at night, there and gone, but you're awake now. She sat at her usual table. I tried not to stare, which only made me more obvious. My thumb folded the edge of the napkin into a small square. Opened it. Folded it again. The thing is, she didn't feel like someone new. More like someone I should have already known. Which is stupid, I guess. Eventually, the barista called out my name, and when I stood to get my drink, she looked up. "You're the upstairs tenant, aren't you?" she asked. I froze with my hand on the cup. "Yeah. That's me." "I thought so. I'm downstairs. I'm Anna." Her voice was calm, low. She said it like we were already neighbors in the middle of a conversation, not two strangers finally naming themselves. "Right. James." I nodded too much, like I was making sure she heard me. She gave a small smile and went back to her book, though her finger stayed wedged between the pages like she hadn't really returned to it. That should have been the end. But later, when I was leaving, she stood at the counter waiting for her refill. "You always in here this early?" she asked. I shrugged. "Helps me pretend I'm awake before class." Her lips curved, almost a laugh, but softer. "I should try that." It wasn't much. Just words. But when she stepped aside so I could pass, the air between us felt different, charged in a way I couldn't name. Outside, the morning was sharp and cold. I walked the few blocks home, thumb brushing the unsent messages on my phone like they might suddenly fill themselves in. I didn't send any of them. That night, around 10, I heard footsteps on the porch. A knock followed, gentle but certain. I opened the door and found her standing there, coat zipped, keys in hand. "James," she said, breath visible in the cold. "My car's in the shop. I hate to ask, but, would you mind giving me a ride tomorrow morning?" I nodded before I thought it through. "Yeah, sure. No problem." Her smile was brief, like a secret passed between us. She handed me a slip of paper with her number, then turned to go. The porch light flickered as she left. I stood there longer than I should have, holding the paper. I thought it was just about a ride. But when she looked back once, just for a second, I felt like the road ahead wasn't going to be that simple. The next morning, she was waiting on the porch before I even came down. Coat pulled tight, scarf wrapped but not quite hiding the tiredness in her eyes. She gave a small wave, like we'd been doing this for years instead of just once. The ride was quiet at first. Her bag sat between us, upright like a barrier. I fiddled with the heater dial, trying to land on the right temperature. "Too hot?" I asked. "It's fine," she said, though she angled the vent away from herself. I wanted to fill the silence, but my brain only produced weather observations and something about traffic. Before I could pick one, she asked, "So, classes?" "Yeah," I said. "History." It's, all right. She smiled faintly, eyes on the road ahead. I used to love history. Almost majored in it, actually. Then life rerouted me. Her tone had the finality of a door clicking shut, but curiosity pulled words out of me anyway. What happened? She hesitated. I got married young. It seemed easier to pick a life than keep choosing one. Her voice was even, but her hand tightened on the strap of her bag. I glanced at it, small, unconscious grip, and then forced my eyes back to the road. I'm divorced now, she added after a pause, as if I should know. Something about the way she said it, simple but heavy, made me want to tell her something in return. My dad, he kind of did the same thing. Picked fast. Didn't stick. Her eyes flicked toward me, then back out the window. I guess that's the story more often than not. We let that settle. The car hummed. The world outside moved past. By the time I pulled into the lot, it felt wrong to just drop her at the curb. I asked if she wanted me to wait, maybe bring her back after. She shook her head. I'll be fine, she said. But then she touched my arm lightly, so light I wondered if I'd imagined it. Thank you, James. Really. The rest of the day, that touch replayed. Over and over. That evening, she knocked again. This time it wasn't for a ride. She was carrying a bag of tea, holding it up like an apology. Peace offering, she said. For making you chauffeur. We ended up in her kitchen, mugs in hand, steam fogging the window by the sink. The place smelled faintly of cinnamon. She talked a little, about the old creaks in the house, about the neighbors she didn't miss. I mostly listened, nodding, adding small things here and there. At one point, she laughed softly at something I said, really laughed, shoulders loosening for a second. And I caught myself staring too long. Her gaze caught mine and held it. Just for a moment. Then she looked down, stirring her tea with the edge of her spoon like it needed more time. Nothing was said. Nothing had to be. But when she set my mug in front of me, her hand brushed mine again, brief, unspoken, deliberate enough to echo in the silence after. It didn't take long for the rides to become routine. Not daily, but enough that my mornings felt strange without her in the passenger seat. Sometimes she'd talk, little fragments of her day, half-formed thoughts she seemed surprised to hear out loud. Other times she'd just sit quietly, coffee balanced between her knees, staring out at the city like it was both familiar and far away. I liked both versions of her. But then things shifted. Not all at once, but in small breaks. One evening, I was coming down the stairs when I saw her in the entryway, speaking to a man I didn't recognize. He was older, mid-50s maybe, wearing a blazer too casual to be professional. He leaned against the doorframe with the kind of comfort that suggested history. She saw me on the steps. A flicker crossed her face, surprise, then something tighter, like she wished I hadn't been there. James, she said, voice careful. This is Mark. An old friend. I nodded, muttered hello. He gave me a once-over, that faint smirk men sometimes use when they're staking out territory. I didn't stick around. Just grabbed my mail and went back upstairs, though my chest buzzed like I'd swallowed static. Later that night, she knocked again. No tea this time. Just her standing there, looking tired. Sorry about earlier, she said. He drops by sometimes. Her words trailed off. She didn't fill them in. I wanted to ask questions I had no right to ask. Instead, I shrugged. Not my business. She studied me then, like she was deciding if I meant that. Her eyes lingered too long, then slid away. We ended up in her living room, the lamp casting a soft circle of light. She sat across from me, legs tucked under her, glass of water untouched on the table. I fiddled with my phone, setting it down, picking it up, setting it down again. You're quiet tonight, she said. I half smiled. You always say more than you realize. That made her laugh, a quiet, startled sound. But then the silence closed in again, and I could feel the weight of all the unsaid things pressing between us. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. You remind me of when I was younger. Before I settled. The way she said it, her voice low and steady, made my throat tighten. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The hum of the fridge filled the room. My eyes drifted to her hands, fingers loose around the glass, nails short, knuckles pale from holding too much in. When she looked up, her gaze locked on mine. Long enough that I forgot to breathe. I leaned forward before I realized it. She didn't move back. For a second, the distance shrank, air thick, every sound outside disappearing. Then her phone buzzed on the table. Sharp. Loud. She flinched, pulling back. I froze, heat rushing to my face. Neither of us said anything. But the almost hung there, like a door left unlocked, waiting for someone to push it open. We ended up walking one evening. Neither of us planned it. I came home late from class, arms full of books, and she was out front fumbling with her keys. She looked up when she heard me, exhaled a soft laugh that wasn't really amusement. Too nice a night to stay inside, she said, like it was an excuse. So we walked. Down the block, past the closed bakery, along streets that felt quieter than usual. The air was cool, with that faint damp smell of autumn. She walked with her hands tucked into her sleeves, shoulders slightly hunched as if she was protecting something fragile. I kept pace beside her, trying not to think too much about how natural it felt. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You didn't ask about him." Mark. I shoved my hands deeper into my pockets. Didn't seem like my place. That's kind of why I wanted you to, she said, voice low. Everyone else assumes, but you don't. I didn't know what to say. My chest tightened, a coil of something I didn't want to name. She glanced at me sideways, hair falling into her face. He's nothing, really. A reminder. That's all. It came out sharper than she probably meant. I caught the flicker in her eyes, embarrassment, regret. She slowed her steps, letting the quiet stretch. I could have left it there. Should have. But something in me cracked a little. It bothered me, I admitted. She stopped. Just like that, feet on the sidewalk, breath visible in the cool air. Her face shifted, like she wasn't sure she'd heard right. Bothered you? I nodded, eyes on the pavement. Seeing him. With you. The words felt heavier outside my head. Too real. But they were out, hanging between us like a loose wire. Her silence cut through me. I risked a glance. She was watching me, lips parted, expression unreadable. I shouldn't have said that, I muttered. No, she whispered. Don't take it back. We stood there on the empty street, both of us exposed in a way that made the night colder. I keep thinking I'm too old for this, she said finally, voice trembling at the edges. Too old to feel like someone could still look at me that way. Her words hit deeper than I expected. My throat tightened. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she didn't even know how much space she took up in my thoughts. But I just stepped closer. Not enough to close the distance, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath mixing with the night air. Her eyes flicked down, then back up to mine. A pause stretched, thin and fragile, before it would break. And for a heartbeat, I thought she was going to let me. The night after our walk, I didn't see her. No light under her door, no sound of the kettle, no quiet knock at mine. It felt strange, like a skipped heartbeat. The next morning, her porch was empty when I left. I waited a few minutes longer than I needed to, car idling, before pulling out. 2 days went by. Still nothing. I kept inventing excuses, Maybe she had early errands, maybe her sister visited, maybe she just needed space. But the hollow feeling in my chest told me I knew better. On the third evening, I caught sight of her at the mailbox. She had her phone pressed to her ear, nodding with that distant half-smile you use when you're not really listening but pretending to. When she saw me, she stiffened. Ended the call too quickly. "Hey," I said, trying for casual. "Hi," she replied. Her voice was polite, clipped. I wanted to ask what happened. I didn't. Instead, I said, "Haven't seen you around." She hesitated, fingers tapping the edge of the envelope in her hand. "I've been busy." That was all. Busy. It shouldn't have stung the way it did. But I felt the ground shift under me. That night, I sat in my room, scrolling through unsent messages again. One half typed, "Did I do something?" Another, "I keep thinking about the other night." Neither left my phone. My thumb hovered, then backed out every time. The quiet between us grew louder. On the fourth day, I came home to find a car parked out front. A different one. Sleek, too new for this neighborhood. Her door was closed, blinds drawn. I stood on the steps longer than I should have, listening for voices. There were faint ones. A man's, low and steady. Hers, softer. Then laughter, the kind I hadn't heard from her with me. I went upstairs without knocking. That night, I stared at the ceiling while music bled faintly from my headphones. Not even songs I liked, just noise to drown out the silence. In the morning, her car was still in the drive, but the other one was gone. She stood on her porch with a paper bag in hand, like she was about to leave. I slowed as I passed, waiting for her to look up. She didn't. "Morning," I offered anyway. "Morning," she echoed, still not meeting my eyes. Then she locked her door and walked to her car without another word. I sat in mine for a long time afterward, phone in my hand. Drafted another message, "You don't have to explain, but please don't shut me out." It sat there on the screen, glowing in the dim light. I never sent it. Instead, I slid the phone face down on the passenger seat and drove off, the empty silence beside me louder than anything she could have said. I didn't expect her knock. It was late, past 10, and I was hunched over my desk pretending to study, the same paragraph on repeat. When I opened the door, she stood there in her sweater, hair pulled back loosely, face pale but steady. She didn't speak at first. Just looked at me like she wasn't sure if I'd let her in. I stepped aside. In the kitchen, she set her keys on the counter and folded her arms, holding herself together. The lamp above hummed faintly. "I don't usually do this," she said. Her voice was low, but clear. "Show up like this. At people's doors." I leaned against the wall, waiting. She drew in a breath. "You've probably noticed I pull away. That I change my mind a lot." I nodded. "Yeah." Her lips pressed into a line, then softened. "It isn't about you, James. It's me not knowing how to let anyone close." She paused, shaking her head slightly. "After my divorce, I promised myself I'd keep things simple. No entanglements. No risks." Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. "And then you moved in upstairs." The silence sat heavy, but not unbearable. I took a step closer, hands jammed in my pockets. "You don't have to explain," I said, though my voice betrayed me. "But if you want me to stop showing up, if you need me to back off, you should tell me now." She looked up at me then, really looked, and I saw the crack in her composure. "That's the problem," she whispered. "I don't want you to stop." The words lodged in the air like just stood in the quiet, the clock ticking somewhere in the other room. Finally, I reached out, not bold, just enough to touch the back of her hand where it rested on the counter. Her fingers twitched, then turned, lacing with mine. Neither of us smiled, not exactly. But her shoulders eased, and the tension that had stretched so long between us softened into something almost gentle. "Okay," she whispered. That was all. But it felt like more than enough. It didn't happen suddenly. That was the thing. There was no dramatic night where we confessed everything and changed our lives. It unfolded the way seasons do, you only notice it after it's already shifted. Weeks passed. Classes came and went, her workdays too. We still walked sometimes, though less urgently. We still shared tea in her kitchen, though the silences grew easier, less heavy. The rides became routine again, but different now. She no longer carried her bag like a shield between us. Sometimes she'd rest it on the floor, sometimes on her lap, but her hand would linger on the console near mine. She didn't always touch me, but she didn't pull away anymore either. Little things anchored us. At 8:47 most mornings, she'd step out with her thermos, steam curling against the cold. I'd already have the car running. She always looked at me before getting in, a small glance that felt like its own promise. One Saturday, we sat on the bench outside the bakery, paper cups warming our hands. She sipped her coffee black, extra hot, just the way I'd first overheard her order. I'd brought tea that time, because she'd once said she liked the smell of cinnamon better than the taste. "You remember too much," she teased. "Or just enough," I said. Her smile then was quiet but real. The fear never completely went away. It lingered in the background, the gap between us, the weight of what other people might think. But over time, it stopped feeling like a wall and more like weather. Some days clearer, some days cloudy, but never impossible to live with. She let me see pieces of her life that had once been closed off. The divorce papers still in a folder she hadn't opened in years. The books she collected but never finished. The small, unremarkable joys, burnt toast, late-night TV, the sound of rain against the old windows. And I let her see me too. Not with grand confessions, but with the ordinary things, the texts I finally sent, the music I played too loud, the way I laughed harder at her quiet jokes than anyone else's. It wasn't perfect. But it was ours. One night, as we sat in her kitchen, steam fogging the window again, she reached across the table and tapped the folded napkin I'd been fidgeting with. "You still do that," she said. "Old habit," I murmured. She shook her head softly. "It's how I knew. From the start. You notice the small things because you feel them." Her hand stayed over mine. Not urgent. Just steady. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't waiting for something bigger. No confession, no grand gesture. Just this, her hand on mine, the hum of the fridge, the quiet warmth that made the night feel less empty. We never did talk about the moment we almost crossed that line weeks ago. We didn't need to. What we found instead was slower, steadier, something we could actually live inside of. When I look back, that's what stays with me, not the missed kiss, not the interruptions, but the quiet way she locked the car doors that first morning. Like she wasn't just asking for a ride. Like she was asking if I'd stay.